Well, hello again. I hope Chapter 6 was informative. Chapter 7 is about listening and feedback. I often call it the lost art of listening. The text has a wonderful skit by Abbott and Costello. I've included the link in my speaker's notes so you can watch it. Trust me, watching it and hearing it is much better than reading it. And by the way, that was before my time. Those of you that are wondering, I did not see them perform live. I'm not that old. So let's go on with listening and feedback. Listening and hearing, is it the same thing? I love to ask this question in class and get feedback from students, but can't get any feedback from you here. So I'll go ahead and tell you that no, they are not the same thing. Hearing is a biological function. You hear a lawnmower, you hear a bird tweet, you hear a car backfire, you hear music on the radio, you hear all kinds of things, but you don't process them as you would in listening. So my mother and my wife's hero, Judge Judy, have both said the same thing. You have two ears and one mouth because you should listen twice as much as you speak. And it has a lot of common sense to it, if you think about it. If you want to understand what's going on, you need to be quiet and listen. Now, effective listening is as an important skill as good speaking skills are. I want you to be articulate, and I want you to pronounce words properly, and I want you to broadcast your voice so you can be heard. But if you don't stop to listen, you're only getting half of the experience. So, listening skills are culturally dependent. You know, in the United States, we're more of an active da-da-da-da. In many collectivist cultures, it's about the group, and because it's about the group, they pay more attention to listening. I'm not saying that Americans are bad listeners. Some of them are. And there's bad listeners in other countries. But you have to understand the cultural background of the person you're communicating with. If they don't share a culture, they're they may not be able to understand you as well as you would hope they could. So, listening skills is a good leadership skill. You know, if you want to lead people, then you need to be able to listen to people and understand people. And if you can't do that, then when you try to have a conversation with people, if they know you aren't listening to them, they're going to lose respect for you because they expect you to, and just like you do, when you're talking to somebody, you expect them to pay attention to you and listen to you. How many times you talked to somebody and they were playing on their phone? You know, they're on their phone and you know they're not paying attention to you. And it probably bothered you. So you need to be a good listener to be a good leader. Now, I've noticed, and this is not out of the textbook, but it's historically I've seen, many of us do not listen to what the conversation is. We're planning our next move, especially if you're being chastised by one of your parents or a supervisor or something. Instead of listening to what they have to say, you're thinking about your alibi or how you're gonna respond to what they're saying. So you need to put that function on the side and listen to what they have to say, and then calculate what you need to say. It takes a little longer, but you know it's a lot better that way. Now, if you're going to become a listener, a better listener, there's an acronym WIIFM. What's in it for me? If you want to understand what's going on, then you need to listen better. And you have to be motivated to become a better listener. You have to have that desire to understand what they're saying. Right now, in this political time that we're in, good listening skills are important, especially when these politicians are spouting off all kinds of stuff that a lot of times is half-truths. You need to listen to what they have to say, and you need to analyze it and be critical about it. So there's four components of good listening. Sensing. You have to be able to hear it. You know, I have hearing aids. Um, Sometimes I don't wear them because I don't want the noise. But I have a son-in-law that's very soft-spoken. And when I don't have my hearing aids in, I keep going, huh, 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 because I can't hear what he's saying. So you have to sense it. And when somebody's talking to you, you have to pay attention. You have to focus on what they're saying. I don't know if I've told y'all this analogy before, but I was sitting on the front porch playing with my phone. My wife came out, and I kept playing my phone and said, uh-huh, yeah, yeah, uh-huh. And she went in, and I realized how rude I had been to her. So you have to pay attention. And then you have to worry about noise. Noise in communication is anything that interferes with the message. It's not just audible. You know, if you're sitting in a classroom and somebody sticks their head in the door while I'm teaching in the front of the classroom and you look over to see this person, you're distracted. That's noise. If you hear a lawnmower going outside, or if you're in a carpenter building downtown, you hear a train going outside, that's noise. It takes away from what you're doing. If you woke up late and didn't have breakfast and you're hungry, or you spent too much time partying the night before, that's noise. If you're tired because it's after lunch and you ate and you're full, that's noise. Noise is anything that interferes with the message. The second component is interpreting the message. You can hear what somebody has to say, but then you have to interpret it. You know, what do they mean by this? And you know, I don't want you to get down into every word, analyzing each word. Why did they pick this word? If you have time for that, it's great. But if you don't have time for that, you still need to interpret the message. When they said there's a dog outside, was that a good thing or a bad thing? You know, was it because they were afraid of the dog or they thought it was cute? So interpret the message. Evaluate the message. Now you've interpreted it. You understand it. I'm going to evaluate it. This becomes very handy in the political atmosphere. Are they saying this just because they want my vote? Do they really mean this? What do they mean by this? So you need to evaluate the message. And then finally, commit it to memory. If you want to understand what somebody's saying, you need to commit it to memory. You don't have to, memorize every word, but you want to memorize the message that they were saying, or how you interpret the message. Now, active listening is something that they taught me when I was in counseling, and it drove my wife up the wall. When I get to that part, I'll explain why. But there's barriers to active listening. One of them is lack of interest. I'm not interested in what you have to say, so I'm not going to actively listen. There's distracted delivery. You know, there's a commercial about a Tide pen where the guy has a shirt, pocket on it, and there's a stain on the pocket, and the guy watching him, it looks like the pocket starts talking. We have distracted delivery because somebody doesn't articulate words properly. When I was in the Army, I was in the change of command ceremony, and my outgoing commander was a very articulate, college-educated person. Had his master's, working on his PhD. His replacement sounded like, well, y'all, I'm here, and I thought, oh my God, he's from the hills of West Virginia, and he doesn't have a fork in his family tree. It turns out the guy had a PhD and 2 masters. He was just not articulate. So his delivery distracted me, and then I was guilty of making assumptions to something I should not have done. So sometimes the delivery is distracting, and it interferes with our ability to actively listen. Arrogance and disrespect. It kind of goes into what I was just telling you about. I mean, I was a pretty arrogant person for thinking because of the way he talked, he was uneducated. And I started to disrespect him based on that. And, the American Psychological Association, the APA, which I want you to cite stuff by in communication, doesn't use first names. It only uses initials because A lot of people are arrogant and they, well, you know, a woman can't know anything, so I'm not going to listen to anything by Ann. If Ann wrote it, then you know, can't be right. So you can't disrespect people based on assumptions. Programmed emotional response. You know, a lot of people are real emotional about certain things. And as soon as you hear about something, immediately jump on that programmed response. And for a long time, it was, you know, gay marriage. Had this programmed response. They weren't listening to what you had to say. This is what they were going to talk. I don't like saying gay marriage anyway. It's marriage. But a lot of people had this programmed emotional response. This is the way it is. And they don't listen. And you need to listen. Some people, something gets in the way, it's called ambushing. You listen to them very closely and wait for them to make a mistake so you can pounce on it. You got to remember nobody's perfect, and sometimes people make mistakes, they misspeak, but you have to understand it in context. You know, was it they were lying to you and now you caught them in a lie, or they were just misinformed? You have to understand that. Listening for facts. A lot of times, you know, like in class and lecture, we listen for the facts. We listen for the facts. We listen for the facts. Well, in a conversation, a lot of times you don't want to do that. You want to understand the nuances, the subtleness of the conversation, not necessarily the facts. I mean, getting the facts is great, especially if you got to take a test on it. But if you're trying to have a dialogue with somebody or a group of people, listening for the facts specifically and only is detrimental. Faking attention. If you fake attention, you're not paying attention. And if you're not paying attention, you're not going to get the message. And lastly, thought speed. Most of us can think like 4 times faster than somebody can talk. So that's one of the reasons that we start planning ahead. You know, we're getting chastised by mom, and we're trying to figure out our next answer. We aren't listening to mom. Our thoughts are running rampant because we're trying to find an answer that's going to get us out of trouble. So when you respond, it's active listening. One of the first things they say to do is paraphrase. That's where it got me in trouble with my wife. Because when I was learning to be a counselor, it was like, so what you're saying is, so what I understand you're saying is, so I understand you mean this. My wife was like, you know, I said it. Don't be, you know, patronizing me. And I wasn't trying to patronize her. I was trying to learn how to be an active listener and paraphrase. Except I was paraphrasing way too much. Express understanding. You know, when somebody's telling you that you know they're hurt or about something, express understanding. You don't just blow it off. Ask questions if you don't understand them. If you don't understand the point they're trying to get to, maybe they're rambling, and ask a question. So I really don't understand what you're saying. I think you're talking about this, but I'm not sure. That's part of active listening. Nonverbal communication. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, shake your head. Oh man, that's so sad. You know, when you kind of frown when somebody tells you a sad story, and you get that wince in your eyes, you know, it tells them that you're communicating, you're listening, and you're paying attention. You know, if they're telling you something sad and you're over there smiling, hey, yeah, But are you even hearing me? So nonverbal communication is a very important part of active listening. And feedback. You know, feedback should always be constructive. If we're going to get feedback all the time. If I'm in class teaching, about 10 minutes before class is over, I can see students putting books away, closing computers, and rattling keys because they're giving me feedback that, okay, it's time for us to leave, shut up. It happens. But in a group experience, and I believe I told you all this when I was talking about brainstorming, you know, if somebody says, let's do so-and-so, you're that stupid, that's one of the worst things you can do. You just shut that person down. If you're giving feedback, make it positive or constructive feedback. And in the last video, I told you about admonishing in private and praising in public. You know, if you're going to give somebody some feedback, publicly, make sure it's constructive. But something that I found when I teach class and I have students give presentations and that type of stuff, if I tell them you did a good job, it means a lot to them because they're great. But if their peers say, hey man, that was a great presentation you did a good job. I couldn't tell you were nervous. That gives them a whole lot more than the feedback I give them because they're expecting feedback from me. But when their peers say that was a great idea, that it makes them feel good. It makes them feel wanted. It makes them feel connected. It makes them feel part of the group. And so that's something that you need to do with feedback. Give positive, constructive feedback. Hey man, that was a great presentation you gave, but you know when you were talking about so and so, you're soft spoken. I could barely hear you. But what I heard was great. You know, that's constructive feedback. It's telling them, hey, you did well, but this was a problem you need to work on. So that's it for Chapter 7. I hope it was interesting. If not, you got my number. Give me some feedback. Give me an email and tell me what I did wrong. Other than that, I will see y'all in Chapter 8. Take care. Bye-bye.